Welcome to the Home Stagers and Designers on Fire podcast, where we help you attract more ideal clients, up-level your business, make more money, and still have a smokin' hot life. Hosted by best-selling author, coach, and speaker Marianne Cherico, this podcast focuses on business and mindset strategies that enable you to create a life and business by design. Now, let's get fired up.
Do you sometimes feel alone while growing your home staging business? Do you know what you should be doing, but somehow don't seem to gain any traction getting the results that you want? Have you thought about working with a coach, but are afraid that this will put you out of your comfort zone? Well, I'm here to tell you that the investment in coaching is the best thing that you can do for your business. When you work with a coach who has your back, helps you break glass ceilings and achieve your goals, gives you business and mindset strategies that are instrumental to achieving success, it's a game changer. Now, how do I know this? Well, I myself have worked with my own coaches, and it's been a game changer for me. And I see the results that my coaching clients get when we work together. When we work together, you'll have my eyes on your business. So if you're ready to invest in you and would like to know different ways that we might work together, let's talk. You can set up a complimentary discovery session where I will help you clarify your goals. Then we'll uncover the inner and outer challenges that might be stopping you from reaching your goals. Trust me, the inner mindset stories can be tricky, and it helps to have a trained coach help you deal with this. And finally, I will let you know how I can help you bridge that gap between where you are and where you want to go. I offer both group coaching and one-on-one coaching, as well as a 6-session masterclass on getting business from real estate agents. You can sign up for my discovery session in the link on my show notes, or go to my website, www.coachingbymarianne.com. Lori Fischer is the founder of Rethink Home Interiors, a thriving home staging business in suburban Philadelphia. Founded in 2011, Lori has taken Rethink from a spark of an idea to a multiple six-figure business, leveraging people, processes, and technology to create a brand that's known for its innovative approach to real estate staging and a team that clients love. Before launching her business, Lori had a successful career in sales and marketing for Fortune 500 companies, where she honed her skills in strategy, leadership, and business development. Now, as a seasoned entrepreneur, she's paying it forward. In addition to running Rethink Home Interiors, Lori is the founder of the Staging Business School, where she teaches others how to transform their passion for staging into a systematized, profitable business. She's also the host of the Staging Sips podcast, blending business insights, mindset, practical hands-on strategies, and in-depth interviews with industry professionals on each episode. And I am delighted to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Lori Renley Fischer.
Well, hello. So happy to be here with you today.
I know. I love collaborating with you. We just did a podcast episode on your podcast, Staging Sips, and your podcast has so much valuable information. And everybody needs to follow Laurie's podcast here because it's so good. And you can get it on Apple, Spotify, most major podcast platforms.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So you ready to dive right in?
Yes, and thank you for all of that, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm a
And we
fan.
have Marianne, you have to check out her episode on Sips. It's like I was just saying, it's going bananas. Everybody is loving it. So,
Well, I like to make people go bananas. Okay. So, Lori, how has your career in marketing and sales helped you create a successful staging business?
Oh, this is such a good question. So when I came out of sales, I was at a point in my life where I was like, is this how I really want to spend the rest of my life? And went through a whole soul searching to start Rethink Home Interiors in 2011. And the one thing I didn't realize that I had, the skill set that I had taken with me, is the ability to just keep going. Just keep trying, keep putting myself out there. I'm an introvert by nature, which a lot of people find interesting when they meet me, but I had been trained and taught to hear no, hear people confused, try your message 1,000 different ways. And in addition to that, I just loved technology and the ability to be in front of people and to do things methodically. I was a pre-med major. So to me, everything is experimentation and trying to do things to methodology. And so I think all of that together is really what has helped me grow the business because in the beginning, I thought everybody would know what staging was. HGTV was talking about it. That's how I had learned about it and thought it could be a career path. And what I realized when I went out into the world and put out my shingle was that most people had no idea what it was. So I was having to explain what home staging was and then what did I do
Mhm.
and my process before I really even understood what my process was. So again, just the ability to keep going and keep trying things and keep putting myself out there and knowing that I had a business before I actually had proof of it, right? Like, so I had the vision held of a busy day, busy days helping clients long before it arrived on my doorstep. So I just knew that I needed to keep taking action. So that I would say is probably the biggest skill set that I took with me and the biggest skill set I think a lot of us need to hone and refine as we go through our businesses, sitting in the discomfort, sitting in faith that the what you're doing will work, that you can create clients out of nowhere just based on continuing to move forward and being willing to try a lot of things. I went to a lot of meetings. I remember one very clearly a networking event where I sat with a woman who on her business card she had that she was a dog walker, a Reiki specialist, a computer programmer, and and having that experience in that networking meeting, I learned, okay, that's confusing when you tell people you do a lot of things. So, taking everything as a lesson. So I would say that's probably long answer to that.
There is so much to unpack just in what you just said. One of the things is that, in your business, just like in staging, it's a creative process. And I think that a lot of people are looking for that silver bullet. Like they want to work with us, you and I, as coaches, that we're going to give them the silver bullet, that strategy that's going to work. And there are no silver bullets. There's no
Right.
silver
So true.
bullets.
Hmm.
And one of the things you and I have talked about a lot is how important your mindset is. And we've both worked with coaches that helped us to see that. And the whole mindset idea of you're trying things to see what's working. You're not assuming that everything's going to work. It's not all going to work. And that's okay. Like to be okay with
Exactly.
that.
Yeah, and also I would suggest too that very often we start with a strategy and almost immediately decide it doesn't work. And one of the things that you really need to do is spend some time getting getting a strategy in place, getting to the point where you're comfortable with it and you've tried that strategy several ways, like email marketing, I'll give as an example. So
Mhm.
if, I was taught to send out a weekly email on Tuesdays from the very beginning of my business. So I did that. And in the beginning, it was hard. I didn't know what to write. It took me a really long time. It was cumbersome. It didn't seem like people were opening my email. I had like three people, and one was my mother and my sister on my email list. Um, but flash forward to doing that for a year. I grew my audience. I loved it. I had agents saying introducing me to their clients saying, and Lori's going to be, you're going to be in great hands with her because she had an experience when she was a kid about, selling her house. And it was because of a blog that I had written that they felt like they knew me. And by the time a year in, it became very easy to do that strategy. Tuesday email is the easiest thing I could have done. So I think people don't spend enough time choosing one strategy to see if it will work. And of course, the silver bullet, like you said, is different for every business. I rarely get business from Instagram, but I get business all the time from presenting and referrals and I always say my BNI group from the very beginning. But that silver bullet's going to be different for every person, and you really don't necessarily know what it is. You just have to try some things and stay with it 3, 6 months, evaluate at that point. So anyway.
And to your point, Laurie, I think people when they start a business underestimate what it takes to start and grow a business. And the beginning is the hardest part in some ways. And yes, as you grow, you have to up level and you can't do the same things that you were doing at the beginning. You have to fine tune it, build better systems and whatnot. But I think people underestimate what it takes to grow a business. And I always tell my clients, what you're doing, figure out if it's working and then 10 times it. Don't assume that
Yes.
you put out one marketing post and people are going to see it. The algorithm shows you that they aren't. And people need to have a gazillion touch points before it registers to them. For instance, let's talk about real estate agents, why they need to work with a stager or why they need to specifically work with you as a stager. So I think that grit and tenacity and consistency are things that are underestimated. And again, that speaks to mindset.
Yeah.
And another thing that you said is holding that vision even when you didn't see the results yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Starting with the end in mind and just realizing that this is what you're going to create. And it's not going to be a straight line to get from A to B. It's going to look more like this, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yep, it's so
Um,
true. And I remember in my BNI group where they always talked about we're planting seeds. That's your whole job is just to plant seeds and plant as many of them as possible, knowing that a certain percentage of that crop is not going to take, but a certain percent will, and that will grow and fund your business for years to come, which is very true.
Mhm.
So yeah, your job in the early days of your business and when you want to go through a growth is to plant as many seeds, like you said, 10x the number of seeds. And we both have studied with Stacy Bayman as well. And Stacy
Mhm.
says that we dramatically underestimate the amount of touch points to create a client. And so when we are feeling like we are not onboarding enough clients, it's just that we didn't put out enough seeds in order to bring that in or create enough opportunities or offers for people to work with us to bring that many clients in.
And I'd like to take that. I don't know if it's not a metaphor. I think it's a simile. I'd like to take that further because a lot of things that I talk about with the clients that I work with the most, it seems, are clients who got certified. They drank from the fire hose, got great information, and now they're confused about what they need to focus their time on and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I always say to them, when you're starting your business, it's seeds, right? It's a lot of seeds. It's, a numbers game, but it's also the seed then grows into a fragile little wimpy stem. Some of the
Mhm.
seeds, some of the other ones, don't worry about the other ones, right?
Yep.
Now it's a little wimpy stem and it needs to be nurtured and fed. And that's your dream. That's your business. That's the vision for your business. It doesn't have the strong roots that it has once you started creating more success in your business.
Yes.
And sometimes that takes a few years. I mean, it
Yep.
takes time. It's not you go from zero to, $500,000. It's just not
Yeah.
real. The people that tell you that it's a lie. It's a bull-faced
Oh,
lie.
yeah. No, I always refer back to one of the books I read in my early days was Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of
Mhm.
Zappos. And he talked about how Zappos, which now I guess Zappos is still out there, but Zappos, which was like all the rage in 2011 and 12 when I was running my business, it took him 9 years to become profitable. Amazon, I think, took 10 years to like really gain traction. And I remember when I was in my sales job listening to AM radio and hearing Amazon ads and being like, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard. And what's the biggest bookstore on earth? Because that's what they were promoting, the biggest bookstore on earth. And I was like, that's never going to take off. Like, but like when you think about that, those are companies that, it had people with MBAs coming out of Goldman Sachs, Wall Street, venture capital, smart people behind the scenes, and it took them that long. So, yeah, I
And look
agree
at
with
them
you.
now.
I know, exactly.
So let's talk about this. A lot of home stagers who are growing their business are working a gazillion hours. A lot of the clients that you and I both coach, they're working a million hours. They want to grow their business. They're afraid to invest. They don't want to go into debt. Maybe, they need a larger warehouse, furniture to accommodate more jobs. They need to hire an assistant or a moving team or both, but they're reluctant to take the leap and they stay stuck instead of moving forward. How
Mm.
would you help them clarify what to do?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I would just say that that's not an uncommon place to be at many stages of your business because you can have gone through the first growth cycle and gotten that running, and then you're ready for the next growth cycle, and you can bump up against that again. So really, there are a couple of things. Two overarching things are math and mindset to be thinking about. And I teach something called the results triad. And it's the combination of your knowledge, your beliefs, and your actions create your results. So the math is the knowledge piece. So what we want to do first is calculate exactly what capacity looks like. So if you want to add one more project a week. So that's four more, especially this comes into play, especially with vacant staging. We want to know exactly what does that look like in terms of if you're bringing on additional inventory, what's that investment? What kind of warehouse capacity do you actually need? Because we really want to know what you're shooting for, right? So we want to look at that first, and then we want to tackle belief because sometimes you'll see those numbers and want to crawl back into a hole. um,
Yeah.
but in the process of doing that math, we want to check your pricing, right? So I just ran through this exercise with a client of mine where they're looking for the next level of warehouse, potentially bringing on a truck, whether that's buy, lease, whatever. And the first thing we did was let's simulate the numbers. What does that rent look like for that warehouse? Is it enough space for what you're actually doing? What does it cost to actually operate your one vehicle? So what does that mean like when you're two, now you're 2x? And then we looked at the pricing and we realized we needed to bump pricing in order to do that. And that became a little bit of like, oh my gosh, my market won't handle that. So
Hmm.
we had to then tackle the belief and the fact that when you go through that process, you are going to end up probably booking fewer projects, but it will take fewer projects to keep you at the revenue level that you're at or increase your level. We ran numbers with another student where it was like we realized in that she could afford like three or four more no's a month and
Hmm.
make more money. Make more money.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
so we have to kind of deal with the mindset. And so then the last step is the action plan, right? So what are the steps we're going to take? What is the priority? So if they're already juggling a lot, we want to make sure the decision filter is in a priority order for what they are experiencing in the business. So is it that we want to focus on first hiring so that when the volume of work goes up, we have support for that team? Is it that we do need the extra truck because maybe that extra truck could be overflow warehouse space, right? You can load a truck, have
Hmm.
it ready for the
Hmm.
next day. So that's really what we do is we take them through that knowledge, beliefs, actions so that we're focusing on math and mindset layered all over that.
And to your point, a lot of these stagers are turning away business and yet they're still afraid to invest. And the whole conundrum comes up about pricing because they're like, I'll never get that price. And that whole belief system around it's a lot more expensive than the competition and I'm going to lose customers. What would you say to them?
Yeah, well, so I think you and I probably both deal with this. Um, but well, it's really interesting. So we've had some case studies with people that I work with where they have gotten access to what other people are charging in their market, and they can't believe how much more expensive it is than theirs. And they recognize that they are busy staging companies and that they've been telling themselves a story. And
Hmm.
so I think that's the first thing is to recognize that your brain is always going to keep you safe, first and foremost. And raising your prices and bumping against that ceiling that you've never touched before is terrifying. And it's funny, I have one student that I worked with recently where we were bumping her number up to a certain number where she's been trying to work on getting there for about a year. And I looked at the number and the difference between what she was charging, and I joked with her, I said, in high school, I think my kid's monthly Chipotle bill was bigger than what you're asking for here, right? Like the delta, the difference between those numbers wasn't huge. So I think that's another thing is just really calling BS on our brains sometimes for that. And, we're every time I recently did an episode about this on SIPs. Every single time that somebody has the courage to raise the price to run their business in a profitable, better way, it elevates everybody. It elevates all of us. It bumps that ceiling right up. And that was the thing, seeing the pricing of other business owners, it was like, oh my gosh, now I can do that and I can provide a better quality, a better experience. It elevates all of us. So I think that's another thing is that, a rising tide lifts all boats, and you might
Mhm.
have to be the trailblazer as well. You might want to be the one who sets that benchmark. And I believe Grant, on your podcast from Decora,
Yeah.
said the same thing. He doesn't want to be he wants doesn't even want to be where his increased prices. He wants to bump beyond that, right?
Mhm.
Because he wants to create a higher ceiling. And I think that is something that we can all keep in mind as we go to think about,
Yeah.
that.
Golden nuggets of wisdom right there, mic drop. But it's so true. I think um, the other thing that a lot of women, especially there's a lot of women in the business and men too, I'm sure,
Yeah.
we're people pleasers, and we don't want to go to our loyal clients and say, oh, our prices are going to be bumped by this much. And we're afraid that, we're going to offend them or lose them as clients, which is even worse. But here's the thing. And there's ways around that. You can always offer them a special, you can call it a special name and call it a loyal customer discount or something like that if you want, and
Yeah.
then take on new clients. There's ways around that if you want. But at the same time, it's okay to lose some business and leverage your
Mhm.
time and your team more effectively
Yeah.
so that you're being profitable. And everybody doesn't want to pay for the cheapest. I know when I hire a contractor, I'm not looking for the cheapest. I'm looking for the
Right.
one who shows up, who,
Yes.
I trust, who does a great job, all that stuff that we don't quantify. But we know, like if we know we do a great job for our clients and we're reliable and we treat their customers with like gold, those are value adds that a lot of times we don't talk about in our marketing.
A
But
thousand
it's
percent.
important. And so, you can be the gold standard or you can be less than, but it's all reflects your brand and what you bring to the table. And sometimes people think that it's better to hire the most expensive. And I'm not saying for everybody here that you have to be the most expensive. There's business models where you make money on volume. But if you want to be more of a boutique stager and you want to make good money per job, then you really have to know your numbers and decide what you're going to charge for the extra value that you bring. And again, speaking of numbers games, you have to be better at marketing. You have to 10 times it. You have to be better
Mhm.
at doing real estate presentations on networking or whatever it is that whatever way you're getting the most business, and kind of pour gasoline on it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So going back to the one story of my student and the Chipotle bill, or my client and the Chipotle bill. So she, after one of our coaching calls, had another call right away with a new investor to her. And she shared her new price. And the person said, great. We were actually thinking it was going to be even higher than that, which I said, okay, so we now know you can bump your prices even further. And she landed two projects with that client immediately. So that was the one thing. But one of the things I had her do around that value piece that you were mentioning is I had her go through an exercise of all the ways her company brings value already, because she did want to do some like, what if I raise the price and then I add on all these things? I said, what if you just raise the price? Let's just raise the price. I
Mhm.
want you to do that. But the other thing I wanted her to think about, and I want every single staging business owner here to think about this. And I tell the story of our team did a styling evaluation and a photo styling for one of my neighbors on my street. And that house sold, first day listed, $65,000 over ask. And all of my neighbors are like, oh my God, did you see our Zillow's estimates or whatever? Which, of course, we all know are low anyway. I'm like, you're welcome. Because not only did we raise the value of one house, we raised the value of that entire neighborhood. And that agent sign sitting out in front of a house that sold first day on market for $65,000, you don't think that people weren't going by snapping a picture of that person's sign so that when they go to do that, and that agent now is going to make exponentially more on every single listing they take? That is the real math behind the value you bring. So if your brain can't get you there, the math most certainly will. And we spend a lot of time saying, oh, we sold this house for 65 over ask. Like that's the end. That's just the beginning of the value you just brought. So I want everybody to remember that for every single one of your agents that does that, that means more clients for them. That means raised values of every other property that they're about to sell in that neighborhood. Like that to me is like the mic drop.
Yeah, that is so good, Laurie. That is so good. I so agree that you need to connect the dots on the value that you bring. It's not enough to say we help you sell homes faster and for more money. You got to show the agent what's in it for them. And you got to specifically create those stories so that they see that in the way that you just said. And here's the thing, it's real estate agents often send out postcards to homes that they've sold in that neighborhood. Now they have huge bragging rights. So anybody
Right.
else that's thinking of selling in that neighborhood is going to be like, I want some of what that realtor brings to the
Right.
table in their marketing and presenting, right?
Exactly. It's like an Oprah moment. Like you get a price increase, you get a price increase, you get
Yes.
list price increase. Yeah. And just to go back one more thing that you talked about was losing clients, right? You will. There are certain
Hmm.
times in your business where you're going to lose the people that got you to where you are right now. I have
Hmm.
lost people that
Yeah.
I thought were so valuable to my business in the beginning. They were my early supporters. They referred me to people and they didn't want to go where our business was going. And the funny thing is every time that we have had that happen, my team is a lot happier because a lot of times those people feel entitled because they
Hmm.
got me and my business to where it was. They wanted to
Hmm.
hoard me too. That was another thing. And they
Hmm.
would place all these extra demands on our team because they were like, well, Lori wasn't on site, so I'm going to nitpick everything that her team has just done. So it was making us all, it's making us all miserable.
Hmm.
Or they don't like the way the new process is of how they pay, for example. Let them go. Kind of the
Yeah.
Mel Robbins. Let them.
Yeah.
Just let them go. And you don't need them all.
Yeah, that's true. And that is definitely a mindset thing that years ago when I worked with one of my coaches, had to help me through because I didn't want to let anyone go, and it's that
Yeah.
scarcity mindset
Yes.
instead of coming from a place of abundance and what's possible.
Yeah.
Um, you help people decide when to build a team.
Yeah, well, a lot of times the decision is already being made for you. You're already burning out, you're missing out on things that you used to do, like maybe that was a daily walk in your life, maybe that's bedtime with the kids, you're working nights and weekends, maybe you're distracted at dinner, maybe your phone is tethered to your hip because you're so afraid to miss that 9:30 p.m. text from a realtor and not get back to them right away. So already that's kind of the writing on the wall and the symptom that you're ready. And really, what it takes is the business owner making a clear decision. Like there's my one friend says, drawing the line in the sand, and we will go no further this way. And making that decision so clear for yourself. And then it's like, what do you do once you've made that decision? Because as you mentioned, sometimes people don't really know what are the next steps. So, the most important thing you can do once you've decided, okay, this is not working for me, I can't sustain this, this is impossible, is you write a huge list of the things that you wish you did not have to do in your business. Sometimes it's hard enough. It's hard for us to know what we want to do. It's a lot easier to be like, if I never had to send an invoice again, if I never had to schedule the movers again, like get a
Mhm.
lockbox code, follow up on if they want to destage or extend, you just write a list of it. And I remember in my early days of experiencing business coaching, I worked with Fabienne Fredrickson, and she paired you up with a one-on-one coach. And mine was this guy Mark, and you checked in once a month with your business coach, your personal business coach. And I was complaining about I was like, I'm exhausted. I'm like up late at night. Like my son slipped a note under my door. He was in like first grade and slipped a note under my door, and it just said, I love you, mommy, because my office door was closed. They knew that I needed quiet time. It like broke my flipping heart. So he had me create this list of things that I didn't want to keep doing. And he said, by the way, how much are you per hour? Like, what's your hourly rate as the business owner? And I said, well, I don't really have one, but maybe like 150 an hour. And he was like, okay. Um, he's like, are you routinely like forgetting to call people back? Are you forgetting to invoice people? Are you struggling to keep the calendar current and organized? And I was like, yes, all of those. Yes. He's like, okay. He said, right now, what you have is a very expensive, very bad admin assistant in your business. You are costing your business $130 an hour for every time you're sitting there when you could pay somebody who is proficient at this $20 an hour.
Mhm.
So that was like the first step. So that's the first step I think people can go through is what are they resenting in the business? What are they terrible at the business? What they wish they never had to do? Create that list. And I called it the Lori not needed list at the time. Where would we want Lori to not be needed? um, and then what you can do from there is you can start creating the plan for how do you begin to extricate those things off of your plate. So if you've decided it's a lot of the admin tasks, and I think that's really the biggest place that most people could really use help with, is
Mhm.
then we want to kind of get some things in order for that person that may be coming on. So just start, keeping notes about what is the way that you do things, how do you do them, and understand that, you are going to have a training process and an up leveling process with this person. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think the biggest epiphany that so many business owners can have is like, okay, yeah, I'm tapped out and I'm costing the business money. Oh, and then the next thing is too, what are you going to spend your time on once you are handing that off? Because what happens for a lot of us is we hand it off and then we take it back, and then we hand it off and then we take it back, and we hand it off and we take it back because we don't know what to do with ourselves. So you have to make a list of that. Like if I wasn't doing all of these things over here, what do I want to do, or what does the business need me to do as the CEO founder? Does it need my marketing outreach? Do I need to be connecting and doing more coffee dates? Do I need to be looking at, can I have this admin set up presentations for me? Should I join a networking group? Can I be making more social media posts? So you kind of have to do those two exercises in tandem. But that's really how I think people can begin to get themselves out of the weeds and help make that decision easier to hire.
So well put. And I think to your point, the idea of having an assistant or 20, 30, whatever the rate is
Mhm.
now for the assistant in your area, um, they're doing, let's say it's $30 an hour jobs now,
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
exactly. In
then so, and
2014.
maybe you're charging, 200, your billable rate is $200 an hour when you break it down. This is
Mhm.
just throwing out numbers, guys. I'm not telling you what to charge. That's a whole other conversation. But just for the sake of making it clear that if you have somebody, now you're talking about you're doing the $170 an hour jobs. The $170 an hour jobs are the C. CEO jobs where you have to have key performance indicators, where you're perhaps the rainmaker. Some of you might want to still be doing some of the design work. That's fine if you want to, fill your creative bucket as long as you have the support that you need. But your assistant, for instance, could be doing administrative stuff as well as D stages, which there's no reason for you to be there at a D stage. So
Yeah.
you have to look at it strategically that they're helping you make money.
Yep, exactly. And if in the beginning you are the lead stager of the business, if that person frees you up the ability to do one or two more projects a month, and say your average
Mhm.
project price is 5K. So that's
Yep.
another 10K a month, 120K a year that you were
Yeah.
able to bring into the business that you weren't otherwise. So it really the math always seems to math
Yeah.
if you really sit and think
Yeah.
about it.
And the fact is, if you're so busy you're turning away business, then you really need to look at this
Yes.
because you can be taking the business, charging more so that the jobs that you're doing, you're making more per job and getting the help that you need so that you can have a life. Because and you believe that your business should support your life and not the other way
Exactly.
around.
Yeah, exactly. And when you are turning away business, that is often the first lever that you pull is increase your price.
Hmm.
Because if you are closing that many projects, we want kind of like again what Grant said, we want you to hear more no's. That means that
Yes.
your pricing is more right size. And if you're ready to go growth, right? So if you're turning away a certain number of jobs because you don't have the capacity and maybe you don't have the inventory, that is a capital investment that's pretty big if you're adding new
Hmm.
houses and if you need to add more square footage in your warehouse and if you need to add more team, the first lever you really should pull is your price because it doesn't add any more overhead, but it prepares you to bring it
Hmm.
on.
Hmm. Yep, I love it. Um, let's talk about how to build a team culture that reflects your business values so that your team feels good about what they bring to the table and the culture is a positive culture.
Yeah, so I think it starts with knowing that you need that.
Mhm.
Again, right, reading that book, Delivering Happiness, by Tony Hsieh, was a great book for me because he talks about that in that book. And so before I hired my first two team members, everybody who listens to my in my world know it's Catherine, my office queen, and Lisa, my lead stager, who's my lead stager. They're both still with me today. They've been with me for 10 years each. And so like that's incredible. And I think that
Mm.
retention is part of the fact that before I brought them on, I stole Zappos core values because I thought they were great. And I like riffed them a little bit. And I created a mission statement, which was moving people forward, one house, one neighborhood, one community at a time. So that and beautifully, I forgot that part. Moving
Mm.
people forward beautifully. That is our mission statement to this day. So when I was looking for who I wanted to bring onto the team, that was the lens I was using. So I talk about having like a team filter, and company culture is a big part of that. So I was looking for people who were a little bit quirky, kind of fun, use exclamation points, it's not anything like you would think is normally corporate, but those were the people I was looking for. I wanted the phone to be answered in a happy way, and I wanted people who were willing to get dirty, but also be cute and beautiful, like whatever,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
I
mhm,
just,
mhm,
that's kind
mhm.
of what I envisioned for my team. And so that really set the tone for the people that I hired. And then, of course, it sets the tone for how we operate throughout our day. So, one of our corporate values is to always be in a growth mindset. To know, like, not be static, right? And so that means that when we're on site working together, even when I have to jump in on occasion, which I do, people are on vacation and things like that. So occasionally I will jump in on a project. If I say, for example, style a coffee table and I walk away and one of my other team members comes by and is like, oh, it looks like it probably could be better, adjust this like 3 centimeters or whatever, or have a whole other idea and restyle it, that's fine. Like that's totally fine in our culture. Nobody feels like I am the end all be all of, and I'm not. My team is so much better than I am. So it's just by creating that culture from the very beginning, which has, I think, helped us. And I want to share an example of one of our clients had a team member who she really felt like was a Debbie Downer. And so the first question, and she was an important team member, so it was really setting the tone for everybody else. And I said, do you have any corporate values, core values for your company? And she didn't. So I guided her to the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which is a fantastic book. And in Traction, it walks you through how to have a core values meeting and how to create your core values, which she did. And she said it was unbelievable overnight what that did to the culture among her team, because all of a sudden people were like, one of hers was like, is something essentially like care for the inventory like the asset that it is, right? Like, so, damage free. And so when somebody was wrapping, extra wrapping furniture, they were like, look at you, corporate culture, damage free, whatever it was. And she said it just like changed everything. And now that person has taken on a whole new role in her company when she thought a year ago that this person probably needed to be let go because of her attitude. And it
Wow.
really started with the core values. So even before you have team, if you set core values for your company and for yourself, I think that's really huge, because then you'll know who you're looking for when you go to hire.
I love it. I love it. I could talk to you forever and ever, but I think we're going to have you back for the podcast.
Same,
Um,
exactly. And vice versa.
let's do it. Um, but before we go, I would like you to tell the listeners how they can work with you.
Mm. So, yeah, through the Staging Business School right now, we have our Accelerate program, and you can go to it's rethinkhomeinteriors.com/accelerate. And you can work with us in the Accelerate program, and that is for those business owners that are ready to go through growth, and you're at that point where the business is deciding for you that you need to hire, and you really want to understand what those next steps are and have access to the resources and the coaching to do that. And then there's also private coaching that you can do at any level of business that you're at. We work with business owners who are, looking to sell, and making sure we have all the right things in place for that. So, yeah, so we'll make sure you have those links.
Well, Laurie, every time I talk to you, I learn something new, and I wrote down the books. I know that I read Traction a long time ago, but I never read the other book. And there's just so many golden nuggets of wisdom, and I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to have been here with you and have just enjoyed being with you. And as always, I learned something new. So.
This episode of the Home Stagers and Designers on Fire podcast has ended. Be sure to subscribe for more strategies on how to attract your ideal clients, up-level your business, make more money, and still have a smokin' hot life. And don't forget to review this show so that we can continue to bring you top-notch content. See you on the next episode.